So, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. I know our times got a little bit shifted around, but thank you for staying. We're here to talk about large-scale HTML5 games on desktop, mobile, and tablets. And it's going to be a combination talk with Amazon and KANO apps. And to give you a quick background on who I am, my name is Jesse Freeman. If you don't follow me on Twitter, I'm on the Twitter thing. LinkedIn, not so much, but I put it up there anyways. And I'm a developer evangelist at Amazon. So what my job is to help developers build, in this case, HTML5 apps for our platform and also adopt our services. And my focus is on gaming. I have a very long background. I come, as I said, from New York. I've worked in very big companies you guys have probably heard of. I've done HBO.com. I've worked for Major League Baseball, the New York Jets, and the list kind of goes on and on in between doing enterprise, to consulting, to gaming, to government, all over the place. But my background really is in web. And over the last few years, as Flash has had a really slow, painful death, HTML5 has come into its place to replace it, and I've been at the forefront of trying to help push that technology forward. When putting together this talk, every year we talk about HTML5 is becoming more prevalent, it's becoming more robust, and we're seeing bigger and bigger games and apps being made with it. And I couldn't think of any better person to come out and talk about it than KANO apps. So I'll introduce Tim Tay and have him give you a little background on him.
Yeah, so first off, I'd like to thank Jesse and Amazon for inviting us and for all of you guys for sticking around. It's been a long day, I'm sure. So we'll try to get through this quickly and hopefully give you guys some insight on building your own HTML5 app development efforts. As Jesse said, my name is Tim Tay. I'm the co-founder and current CEO of KANO apps. Through this talk, I'm going to try to give you guys a picture of how we got to where we are today and some of the lessons that we learned along the way. While I started out as a developer, my role within KANO has evolved and changed over the years. And although I'm still heavily involved on the product end, I haven't actually written code outside of a hack day in quite some time. So that said, if you guys have any technical questions through this talk that I can't answer, please email me, and I'll put you in touch with someone on our team who can help. So on that note, I'm just going to hand it back to Jesse.
So we put together just a little agenda so you don't have, so you have some clue of what we're going to go over. And basically, we're going to just paint this picture here. And the story that we want to tell is a really powerful one, and it's what we're starting to see emerging in the HTML5 gaming space. And it really is, I'm going to go into the landscape, but it was really this notion of how do you take a fully online game that completely scales from AWS, and how do you get it onto a mobile device and continue to leverage this AWS infrastructure and scalability while not having to change or rewrite any code at all. So after the HTML5 landscape, we're going to go into a little bit of KANO app. We'll see some of the games that they've made, which you guys have probably heard of. We'll talk about how to scale with AWS. We're going to go into the building the AWS foundation, because you can't scale without a really solid foundation, what it means to launch a new HTML5 game in this current landscape. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with talking about how you can actually publish an HTML5 game to a Kindle device without having to change any code. And then we'll do the Q&A. So, I like these, very generic quotes that always get thrown around a lot. And, there's always some truth to this. And, this one from Gartner is that there's 50% of mobile apps deployed will be hybrid using HTML5 in 2016. Well, that's a crystal ball kind of thing, right? The reality is that we're starting to see this now. And while HTML5 on its own is still maturing and being able to be published, what we're seeing is a lot of games and apps are actually adopting bits and pieces of HTML5 and putting it into their own product. And the reality is that right now, games run really, really well. Actually, the games that I wrote, I took part in this game jam last year called 1 game a month, which if you've ever had to write one game is kind of hard, but I've made 12 games last year while doing a full-time job. But all of them are being heavily trafficked on my own blog, all from mobile devices, which is really kind of crazy. So we're seeing a lot of people playing games on mobile devices. And what's really happening is that because there's such this shift now, like I said, from the Flash days now into HTML5, we're seeing these really, really great open source frameworks and closed source frameworks that are filling in the gaps. So there's a current list on HTML5GameEngine.com that has all the game engines. There's a joke that we usually like to tell each other is that there's more HTML5 game frameworks than HTML5 developers out there. But to help simplify it, the top 5 ones that I have is Impact.js, which is a really good one, but it costs $100 for a license, so a lot of people are afraid to pay for something that they feel should be free. I think it's really great. Phaser.js. Phaser is a new one that just came out. Good friend of mine, Richard Davey, he was big in the Flash scene, does a lot of really great games for BBC and stuff like that. So he wrote a game engine. Easel.js is a really common one. Another guy that I'm friendly with, Grant Skinner, who took basically everything he saw in Flash and kind of repurposed the APIs over to JavaScript. GameMaker is a really well-known 2D game platform. So they output to all kinds of different platforms natively, and they also export out to HTML5, and then also Construct 2. So we're seeing not only are there so many of these things out there, but they're actually maturing really well, and the level of games that we're seeing is really great. And I think what Unity today announced that they're going to support WebGL through ASM.js. So we're starting to see that a lot more people are taking advantage of the power that's in the browser. The real question, though, is, great, so you can build games in the browser, but how do you actually get them to people? And oh God, I hate this. As a designer, like I really tried hard to make this the best looking slide I could, and I just couldn't come up with anything more boring than what Word could output. But this really boring graph has a lot of telling information. I call this the distribution versus monetization model. And the idea is that on the bottom, I feel like I should be like over here. Like on the bottom, we have the spread between native and web. And this is distribution. So on the native side, while everyone's hearing all these stories about millions of devices that are being bought and all this stuff, native is actually a really small platform. But if you look at web, web is a huge platform because not only does web actually include mobile devices, but it also includes desktop devices. So there's a huge distribution you can get out of web. The other part of it, going up, is monetization. And the idea is that what we're seeing is that even on these smaller platforms like native, we're seeing huge monetization opportunities because there is a store, there's built-in in-app purchases, and all these mechanisms for getting money out of people. The web never had that. So even though we have a huge distribution on the web side, it was always very hard to monetize that. The sweet spot is actually being in between both. How do you actually get high distribution and high monetization? And the idea behind it, and what we're going to kind of talk about, is this notion of, well, you should be able to take your web games, keep them online, but also distribute them through native stores while still maintaining the same code base, not have to change a single line of code, and you can get everywhere all at once. And so to tell that story, I'm going to switch this over to Tim and have him go a little bit into KANO apps and how they're using all of this stuff I just talked about.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, KANO Apps is a developer of multi-platform, free-to-play games utilizing HTML5. We were one of the early developers on the Facebook platform, and we've released 6 free-to-play games on multiple networks. While our success has been primarily driven on the desktop, we do have mobile web versions of our games and are looking to build out our app presence later this year. Our start came at the end of 2008 when myself and 2 others saw an opportunity on the newly opened Facebook platform, quit our jobs, and worked on our first game release. We were introduced to the platform through a contract, but quickly took the opportunity when we saw the potential that the viral channels were providing. Actually, before we took the contract, we were pretty apprehensive, first because we were web developers, and we hadn't made a game before. And second, because it seemed stupid for us to target a single website for its players instead of targeting the whole internet. Like Jesse said, however, Facebook was a way for us to get seen by the right type of users to make our free-to-play games work. So from that point, in any case, we looked at Facebook as that huge opportunity. We quit our jobs, we bootstrapped, and then we haven't looked back since. KANO Apps is based in Victoria, BC, Canada, which most of the people that I've talked to think of as a tourist destination. When we started, most of the social and mobile gaming development was done here in the Bay Area. That said, however, the shift over the last 5 years has been because the distribution model for gaming has put more power back into developers, and creating a hit game with a small team is again a reality. This diagram shows a timeline of the growth of gaming studios in Victoria alone, with the size of the circle representing the size of the studio. As you can see, the hockey stick growth parallels the rise of social and mobile gaming, and we actually have a thriving gaming community where we're located. I think this is really important because it shows how even small teams in smaller markets can create successful gaming studios no matter where they're located. It also helps that Victoria, BC has a strong tech community and great talent, but that's really more important when you're looking at scaling your company than trying to build your first hit. Since our start, KANO Apps has released 5 top-rated strategy games on Facebook. We were runner-up for MMO of the Year on Armor Games last year. We're a Congregate preferred partner, and 5 years later, we have millions of players who enjoy our games worldwide. We currently have a team of 20 extremely talented creators and continue to be self-funded, profitable, and growing. I most definitely will say that our success was initially on being in the right place at the right time and tapping into an emerging market. That said, our success is also built upon a foundation of hard work and long hours. When we started, there were 4 of us working out of my partner and his girlfriend's condo, and I actually worked in the kitchen and sometimes would still be coding when she woke up to grab breakfast. Needless to say, we need to start making money and get out of there before we were kicked out. As developers, we were able to save a lot of time because we didn't have to hire engineers. And with Facebook, we were able to leverage viral channels and free marketing. One additional secret weapon we had was a game called Mob Wars. Mob Wars at the time was the biggest game on Facebook and run by a single indie developer named Dave Maestri, who at the time moved back to his parents' house and was working on a gaming idea when it went viral. People refer to Dave as the godfather of social gaming, and he was really the guy to prove out the free-to-play gaming model for social gaming in 2008. We got to know Dave early on, and he helped us to market our games from Mob Wars through a rev share. But as we started to generate revenue almost right away, and we were cutting these checks monthly, we decided that instead of doing that, we wanted to try to take that cash and use it to build a company. So we eventually changed that strategy, and we brought Dave in as a partner. This proved more important because our next step was to look at scaling our games. First off, we had no idea how to scale a game. We had an idea of how to do it in theory, but we actually hadn't implemented scalable architecture at that time. So some of the questions that we had were, will our servers handle the traffic? How will we scale? What happens when a server dies? Luckily for us, Dave at the time had scaled Mob Wars using AWS. So we did some research, and in the end, we turned to AWS as well. AWS was awesome because it provided instant infrastructure, it was well documented, and it was supported by third-party services and consultants. When we started, like I said before, we were working out of an apartment and we didn't have room for servers. Actually, if we had 4 desks with dual monitors and servers in the apartment, Jen probably would have killed us. But Amazon provided on-demand services that were cheap, instant to test with, so we tried them out. Without that large upfront investment as a bootstrap company, the risk was low, and knowing that others were using AWS gave us the confidence in the platform. This slide shows how our infrastructure looked when we first started, noting that Viking Clan was actually the only farm that was available on day one. We actually started with a single web server running local memcache and a separate MySQL DB. But we were able to create this farm based on the advice from Dave and documentation that we found online. Eventually, we moved our infrastructure to RightScale, which is a third-party layer on top of AWS. And we brought on the services of a MyCloudWatcher consultant named Ed Goldberg, who was really instrumental in helping us tune our servers. Once we tuned the infrastructure, it was relatively easy to clone and then deploy for new games. So this slide shows how the infrastructure has changed over time. As we've grown, it's been easy for us to build new servers and additions like MongoDB and Node.js. We also moved from manual scaling of web servers to auto-scaling arrays. We've adopted new features by Amazon, including ELBs, Route 53, and SES. As a developer of online games with client and server architectures, once you have a scalable infrastructure in place, that backend can be reused and refactored for new projects. Having the confidence that you can do this really helps you to focus on other areas of game development. Outside of being a great platform, AWS is extremely well documented. And like we stated before, it has a lot of third-party integrations and partners that can help you build your infrastructure if you don't have the skill set or the knowledge to do that in the first place. Finally, AWS continues to get better. The services over time have gotten cheaper as more people are on the platform. They've been adding new services all the time. And over the last 5 years, we've had really extremely great uptime. And that is super important when you're running a 24/7 customer base. Being down really means that every time you're down, you're driving zero revenue. You're pissing your players off, and it's just bad for obvious reasons. Like we stated before, AWS has a lot of third-party integrations and partners you can work with to help you build out your infrastructure. Oops, sorry. The bottom line is that while we have built up that technology, our goal is not to build up great technology, it's to build great games. And Amazon really helps us to do that by, taking care of the technology side of things. So in 2013, we were reintroduced to a game called Freerider by its creator, Ira Wiley of One More Level and the founder of addictinggames.com. Freerider is a community-driven stickman bike game where players race on tracks created by other players. Melding a perfect balance of competition and creativity, Freerider has delighted millions of people worldwide, and over 2 million tracks have been created. When we were introduced to the game, Freerider 2 was the latest version, and that was released in 2007. We went on to work on Freerider 3 in 2013 with a small set of upgrades to give the community what they've been looking for the last few years, and also for us to gauge where the player base was. Needless to say, the results were really exciting. The game still had a highly engaged community. People were excited to see work being done on the game, and they wanted more. People were asking for a mobile solution, and they were asking for a version that was accessible on older browsers and hardware. So we listened to the community and gave them what they were looking for. Freerider was completely rewritten from the ground up in HTML5 with improved performance. We added a new responsive design that was playable on desktop and mobile, and we enhanced the game with new features like replays and racing. I'm proud to say that FreeriderHD.com is now a truly multi-platform game, and while we're still in beta, the feedback so far has been really good. I actually came into the office the other day. These are the different devices, so laptop, tablet, and phone. But I came into the office the other day, and the guys were playing Freerider on an Xbox One. I think this is really important because, as Neil Mohan from Google says, 90% of consumers start a task on one device and finish it on another. So how did we get there, and what did we learn? More importantly, why HTML5? Well, for one, we've been HTML5 developers since the start, so the progression was really something that made sense. HTML5 would allow us to reach a mobile audience without alienating our desktop audience. And it also would allow us to continue our continuous development lifecycle, managing a single code base instead of many. In moving Freerider to HTML5, we had two major tasks. One was to build the website portion of the game with profiles, leaderboards, rankings, and the other was to build the actual game itself. For the website, we did a fair amount of research into cross-platform and mobile frameworks, but in the end decided to roll a bespoke solution using our own responsive layout, utilizing CSS3, media queries, transitions, and custom fonts. We also utilize user agent strings to detect which device was being used, allowing us to change the website and game functionality. When using the tablet, for example, you see tablet controls, and when you're using a mobile device, we show mobile controls that fit better for the UI. Here are some additional tricks that we learned along the way. Optimize and compress your images, scripts, and CSS. Fast page load speed is critical because slow pages equal bounce users. Design for mobile first and then move to the desktop from there. This will help eliminate features that you don't need and make it easier to develop your media queries. Make sure that your images are high resolution. This allows high pixel ratio devices to render images in high quality. One gotcha that we found that my developers wanted to say was, for making canvas crisp on high pixel density devices, you multiply the canvas width and height by the pixel ratio and then set its style to normal width and height. This will give you a crisp canvas line on high pixel density devices such as your iPhone and iPad. Design using push state. For those of you who don't know what push state is, push state allows you to change the browser user URL without refreshing the page. By doing this, we were able to create a smoother user experience, especially on mobile. For our solution, we use Backbone. The game portion of FreeRider was written in JavaScript and was built on top of the HTML5 canvas element. As the prequels were all ActionScript 2, which is very similar to JavaScript, rewriting the game for Canvas wasn't too much of an issue. As our Canvas experience was fairly limited, though, we utilized Create.js libraries for certain aspects of game development to provide support for sound, easy sprite, and button management. One major goal we had with FreeRider was to improve the performance and allow mobile gameplay. But due to the large amount of lines being drawn, complex tracks would still bog down the game, and the mobile devices would crash. We overcame these issues by utilizing multiple canvas elements, which allowed us to cast tracks into separate sections and get the performance that we were looking for. Although FreeRider HD is now released, we still have a lot of work to do, especially when looking at the app versions of the game. We've tested different solutions for mobile distribution with the following results. Ludi and Game Closure allow us to get the native performance we want, but still require a little bit of a rewrite. PhoneGap doesn't require that rewrite, but doesn't provide us with the canvas performance that we need yet. As far as the Amazon's concerned, so far we've tested with the Amazon's accelerated browser and with really great results, showing great performance and support right out of the gates. As far as how we're going to bring FreeRider to iOS and Android, there's still a little bit more research that we need to do, but things look promising with some of the tech that I talked about earlier. Based on effort and value right now, the Amazon App Store is really exciting to us. I know this looks like a plug, but this is literally how things went down. I actually got off a call with Jesse at 3 o'clock. I ordered a Kindle Fire HDX. It came next day in the morning. We turned it on, connected to Wi-Fi, we loaded the game, and people were playing it and handing it around the office. Outside of being that easy port, the Amazon App Store is also really exciting to us because it's still relatively young and growing. The one-click payments equal less friction for payments and more seasoned spenders. And when you're trying to create a free-to-play game, this is really critical. Lastly, forging ahead with game development on the platform doesn't mean that we have to fork our development efforts, and we don't have to stray from our multi-platform approach on one single code base. For us, really the only thing that's holding us back at this point is the game itself, and ensuring that our free-to-play model and the monetization model is correct before we push it to these different platforms. So just to recap, we saw an opportunity and we tested the market and we rolled a solution to take care of existing players. We were cognizant of the mobile opportunity and built with mobile support in mind, testing to ensure that we would be able to reach the distribution channels when we were ready. Lastly, we've been patient to make sure that our game's free-to-play mechanics are sound before pushing to any of these new channels, and using our web version to test with real players. With native embracing with free-to-play and HTML5 gaining more support, I think that we as KANO apps are in a great place right now to leverage what we built and produced to create truly great multi-platform games. On that note, Jesse will talk about how easy it is to move to the platform.
I'll do the plug. Thank you. You know, when I reached out to Tim, I've been a big fan of their work for a very long time. And, you know, part of my job is going out and just finding developers and being able to enable it. Like the story that he told isn't the only person that I've worked with that has that story where we're able to quickly get someone up and running. And, you know, the idea really is that we're trying to make it as easy as possible to publish an HTML5 game with us. And to that extent, the way that it works is that we have a tool that you can download on a Kindle Fire called the Web App Tester. And once you download it from the Amazon App Store, all you have to do is put in your URL. So this is a picture, a screenshot of it. As you can see, there's FreeRider HD up there. There's some of my own games. And once you do this, you simply put the URL in, and then you test out the Amazon Web View. And what's really important about this is that, one, again, like I said, you keep your entire game online. So you don't have to package it up. You don't have to deal with all that mess. You know, this is with the notion that your game is always an online game. But then you can test with the Amazon Web View. And what we've done is we've optimized the Web View on the Kindle Fire to give you the best experience possible. So you can also test with the native Android Web View, which is how many people have built an HTML5 game for Android? How many people are happy with it? Yeah, all right, exactly. So,
If you're focused on Android or focused on iOS, there's no two webkits are.
None of them are the same. But just to gloat, I guess we show the difference. You can see the stock one and what it would show like on, you know, a stock Android device, but you're really going to see incredible performance. And on top of the incredible performance, we also support WebGL, which is really cool. So if any of you guys have seen what Goo is doing, Goo Tools, it's doing like an online 3D game engine. Been chatting with them a lot, and their demos all run on the devices, and it's really incredible stuff. So again, all you do is, I've taken this process that takes you like 3 minutes, and I'm expounding on it for like 10. But, you know, put in your URL, you test it out. Once you test it out, you'll see whether it works. So it's easy to get the user agent. You can go through, again, it should be pretty much if you're supporting responsive design, you're immediately going to see what your app is going to look like on our device. So I played a few rounds of it, which, by the way, it's a very challenging, in a good way, kind of game. Although it's also just as much fun to actually crash the bike as it is to try to complete it. But once, you know, I went through the whole thing, made sure that everything worked. Once I saw it was done, I was ready to submit. So in that point, all you do is you go into the App Store, you supply us the URL, you do all the same stuff that you would do with any sort of native submission. So you add in your screenshots, you add in your description, and you're good to go. And really, you know, the opportunity is this. It's keep your games online, use the same existing distribution model that you're already using, capture all the people who are online, and also take advantage of the Amazon App Store. So, you know, reaching millions of Kindle users. Again, you know, we support all the standard HTML5 technology that you're going to come to expect, right? HTML5, you know, whatever that buzzword kind of encompasses, but it really comes down to just building really good JavaScript games. Again, unlike, you know, some of the other accelerated solutions out there for publishing, because it is a web render, you can actually layer Canvas with HTML5 elements and have mixed games. And then CSS and responsive design stuff. Also, again, it's all GPU accelerated, so you're getting the best performance you can possibly get on the Kindle, and it's, you know, built in for you. You don't have to optimize specifically for it. Also, you get to put your apps right next to native apps. And what that means is in our store, you can actually charge for them. So you can charge for them. You can integrate some of our in-app purchases through a JavaScript API. So some of the stuff that you can't get online, you can actually integrate really well. So when you do have a version of it for Kindle, you can still take advantage of monetizing it. And also, you can qualify for our Developer Select and the free App of the Day program. So, you know, what it is you apply for this program, and when you get picked, we'll help you promote the app. which is really kind of an incredible offer in stores you're not seeing. So we'll feature the app, we'll help with marketing it, and really try to help you get your name out and get your app out. And if you want to learn more about it, it's just a really simple URL. It's just developer.amazon.com/webapps, and that'll take you there. So that's sort of the end of the talk. Again, I really want to thank Tim for coming out and talking about the great stuff that KANO Apps is doing. We're looking really forward to having their game on the platform when it's ready. That's the last 10% of building a game is always the most challenging, right? It's the monetization.
Yeah, so, Jesse was talking about like the loading on the game, playing it, and saying that it was hard, and that's something that we definitely surfaced through play testing it with users or looking at how different people interact with the game. Because it's great because there's a community of user-generated tracks there. But if people are hitting the site for the first time, they could jump into any track. And if they jump into a really difficult track, the likelihood that they're going to stick around might be really low. So we're working on trying to make sure that we can build up that progression so that players can jump into the game and play for a long period of time to get to the point where they are addicted to that aspect of the game.
And I think it's also really cool because personally, I'm always looking out for people who are doing stuff where you're creating content. And it's really great to crowdsource created content for games. And, so it's another interesting online content creation thing, watching a community build the game itself. Also, in addition to the HTML5 tools, if you're native developers on Android or iOS, we have a whole suite of cross-platform tools, which if you've been here all day, everyone's been giving you kind of the really good sales pitch on what to adopt. But check out the developer portal. We have a lot of really great stuff from A/B testing to analytics to ads to in-app purchases to actually allowing you to be able to offer physical goods through your apps, which I think is really incredible, especially for game developers who are looking for additional ways to monetize. And then if you like this, there's also a little bit.ly at the bottom for a little quick survey for you to do. And the thing I just wanted to wrap up with it and to kind of take it home, it's the notion that, KANO Apps are building really, really large games that are, being played by millions and millions of people. If you're an indie game developer like I try to be at night when my kids are sleeping, it's, the same demos work for you. So after all the 12 games that I built last year, I basically been building my own little HTML5 game portal, which works perfectly on this, so I can distribute the game portal itself with all of my games in the store, and then I can take each individual game and distribute them individually too. So I'm trying to build more and more examples, and I think that if you're playing around in the space and you're looking for ways to leverage this, please get in touch with me. I'll hang around here if anyone has any questions, and I'll open it up as well. But take my card if you're doing anything with HTML5 or you're doing anything with gaming in general, which I guess everyone's here because we're at GDC, right? I'd love to hear from you. And thanks. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
I may be a little bit of an odd person to ask this question, but I'm from Kindle to make an animation software called Harmony that exports out to various different formats. And so I'm just kind of wondering from a graphical perspective what some of the challenges that you guys are facing in getting efficient graphics into HTML5.
Well, since we're... Oh, yes. So you build a graphics tool for exporting to different formats, and you're asking what are some of the challenges we're facing with, I guess, rendering graphics on the platform. Well, we have the same constraints as any web browser does, basically. So, Canvas performance is always going to be much better. So you're talking rasterized graphics, sprite sheets, texture atlases, bitmap stuff. I don't think anyone really has a very good solution for SVG. And I think that's a big gap that we're seeing right now in the space where people came over from Flash don't really have a one-to-one comparison. But, I mean, nothing specific off the top of my head outside of just, optimizing for mobile browsers. That's the most important thing. If you're already doing that, then you're going to be able to take advantage of those same type of optimizations. Again, our HDX devices have very high resolutions, similar to iPad and Retina displays and other devices that are coming out. So just like Tim was saying, like being able to understand how to scale a game up correctly and not put a canvas at full resolution on a high resolution display. Those kind of little subtle tricks will help with rendering it. Are there any other questions? My favorite color is blue. I like long walks on the beach. And everyone wants to go to whatever the party is for tonight, right? So thanks for coming out. I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Tim. Great job.